Kenya is the only country that I've identified of the ones that I look at, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, where the number of cards issued is going down. I just find that mind-blowing. We don't have like direct integrations with anything for like 6 million users. Like, maybe if you're at 100 or something, then it starts to seem.
And for you, you're like 6 million is a lot.
Yeah.
Why can't you collect from customers in Nigeria and Kenya and South Africa? What's going on that's making it so difficult? And therefore, what does an Ebanx have to do to actually make that business work?
Most of these businesses are not payments companies.
Infrastructure actually unlocks economic opportunities, right? Because just by Ebanx having these integrations, all of a sudden now, trade between a Nigeria and the USA increases. Welcome back to the F Squared podcast, where we explore the people and ideas shaping the future of African fintech. Today, I'm joined by Wiza Jalakasi, known to many as the African Fintech Guy and currently serving as Director of African Expansion and Market Development at Ebanx. Wiza's journey has been anything but linear. From his early career moments that reveal just how much work there was to be done in financial services, to building a powerful presence on social media, and then playing a front row role at Cash during one of the continent's most visible fintech stories. Now at Ebanx, he's focused on solving one of the toughest puzzles in African digital commerce: how global brands collect payments on the continent. In this conversation, we'll unpack the roadblocks, the opportunities, and why payments in Africa remain both the hardest and most important problems to solve. Wiza, the Africa Fintech Guy. Welcome to the show, man.
I'm really deeply honored to be here. Big fan of the show. I knew you before you were famous.
So, Not that I'm famous.
Big fan of the work that you've been doing and the work that you're doing now. And congratulations on removing the paywall. Saves me $10 a month.
Exactly. No, I think it was about time. I think, and it'll speak to some of the challenges you're building about subscriptions in Africa. So I think it's got to do with that. But I think one place I want to start is that, at least with our generation, nobody grew up dreaming to be a fintech person, right? Like, fintech just happened. And I think it'll be interesting to go back into your journey and understand how you got into fintech. That means going way back, because I understand you founded a few companies, had a few successes, had a few misses. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So I agree that I don't think anyone makes I want to work in financial services.
Exactly.
So, born and raised in Malawi, spent the bulk of my youth there. My dad used to import computers from South Africa and resell them in Malawi. So got exposed to that at a very young age. By the time I was 11, I was writing BASIC. Because there was not much to play with in the house, but for sure there will be computers, right? So it's like, okay, a bunch of computers come in, install Windows 95, install Windows 98. It's like, okay, you get tired of solitaire and all these other things. So it's like, okay, let me figure out this BASIC thing. And that's sort of like changed something in me, because like, wow, you can actually make these computers do anything if you just give them the right instructions. And that like sparked a curiosity that has never really left. So over time I got into web development. So I remember we got dial-up internet in Malawi, and I used to download games from miniclip.com and put them on floppies and sell them to my classmates. And I got in trouble for that. I was not supposed to be selling things in school. But just really fascinated by the web, fascinated by programming. Eventually started like a web development studio in Malawi. We did some good work.
And when was this?
This is, I want to say 2007 through 9-ish.
Just before uni.
Just before uni years. So finishing high school. And then that studio started to really take off. We got a lot of like enterprise, corporate, small businesses. And then eventually we did the police website for Malawi Police Service, which was a highlight and sort of like put me on the map. And then, I moved to Kenya in 2012 to study in USIU. It was very, very fun times. The academic system in Malawi shut down for all of 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, so all
Why?
the lecturers were striking
Okay.
because the president at the time had a lecturer arrested for using his name in an example in class. So there was this whole debate about academic freedom.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was like probably one of the best things to happen to me because my parents then asked me to look for options outside.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving here. Didn't learn much in class, but learned a lot in school.
An interesting anecdote about that. I was doing research for this episode. I spoke to someone who was with you in that period, and they said like, Wiza's become like a big shot fintech guy. And I was like, it says a lot about your time at uni.
Yeah. Okay, at the time of my life in USIU. Truly amazing place. If you're willing to take advantage of the opportunities that the school gives you, you can really succeed. But then you also don't need to do much, right? It's one of those places where it doesn't take much to just pass, but there's so much more that you can do than just pass. So that was like very critical for me. I applied to become a Google student ambassador. And, like an advocate for Google products on campus. So, they started like, that was a great experience. They took us to Ghana. We had a whole summit thing, and it was really, really fantastic. This was like 2015-ish, 2014, 2015, as I was approaching my final year. And then I co-founded a market research company called Juaji with one of my classmates at USIU. And, we were just like Silicon Valley, Silicon Savannah dreaming. That time Obama was coming. It was a very, very interesting time in tech. And, we were using M-Pesa. So it's a survey for rewards. There's many platforms now like Ajua, M-Survey. And, we were building some version of that and using mobile money as the incentive. And probably if I had the knowledge that I have now, that would have been a very successful business. But we were both inexperienced, my co-founder and I. Even though we had really good traction, we were scoping a project for Nielsen. Nielsen saw it, they loved it. They're like, this is how to make it work. We ultimately were not able to turn it into a business before we ran out of money. We raised 30K from Savannah Fund. Shout out Mbwana Ali. Love the guy. That sort of like seeing that and seeing the impact of mobile money, I was like, okay, what else can we do on top of mobile money, right? But I ended up joining Africa's Talking late 2015, early 2016.
And that is like, at this point, your business is failed. It's shut down.
Failed. And I've written extensively about that. The process that I went through. And again, having the right investors, I think, makes a big difference. Because I remember getting on the phone with Mbwana and telling him, like, yo, boss, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's not making sense. And he's like, okay.
And that was like, is it the mental toll or, because you've said that you started getting some traction, right? So I'm thinking maybe the commercial side wasn't as bad as it's, in retrospect.
No, I think I wasn't able to drive the business in the direction that it needed to go as quickly enough.
Got it.
As we would have needed in order to not raise, additional capital and all these things. So it was a very tough decision. And then also different people on the team had different ideas of how that should be structured. So I think we weren't very tightly aligned. So I was like, it's okay. I've really tried. By the time I was getting to that point, I really felt that I had tried.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not a decision anyone takes lightly.
Yeah. So that was that. And, joined Africa's Talking as really, I think, the first dedicated business development person for scaling outside of Kenya. There was a handful of people there at the time. I like to think we were 20, 30 something. And then really drove business development at Africa's Talking and went back home to Malawi to launch the Malawi office. And that ended up doing very well. That business is still there today, and it's doing reasonably well. And then they asked me to move back to run international expansion. Just around the time that we were closing the investment round from World Bank, IFC, Orange, Digital Ventures, and Co. And at the time, it was like an $8 million Series A was really a big deal.
That was something.
So I stayed at AT for another 2 years. really running the expansion function. We did, we launched, I think, 7 or 8 offices, but touched 20 countries. So it was myself and a team of 3. And we.
And what did that look like in terms of, going into a new market? What are those motions like?
It was really just you show up, hey? Like you really just, you get on the plane, you show up, and you're like, okay, so where do we start? You go to the hubs, first of all, the technology hubs. Really good starting point, identify, smart people who can help you navigate, get registered in Zimbabwe, get a license in the Gambia, understand the requirements, hire lawyers, incorporate. I'll never forget Cote d'Ivoire incorporated the company on WhatsApp. Just like talking to a lawyer on WhatsApp, and boom, incorporations are out. So it's really incorporate, get the necessary regulatory permission. And some of the countries like Malawi didn't have a licensing framework for the type of work that we're doing at Africa's Talking, which is telecoms aggregation. So we just like write them for an LNO, and they're like, yeah, sure. So you start to shape the regulation in some of these markets. So it was very different. And around that time is when my team was doing a great job of managing all the the smaller countries. And then South Africa started to become very exciting and relevant for me around 2018. And South Africa is a tough market, I think by any standard, for any regulated business. But it is absolutely worth doing correctly. So I started spending a lot of time in South Africa. We were launching a product for one of our clients who wanted to track the medication adherence for non-communicable diseases. So, did you take your medication today for this lifelong condition that you had? And that was a massive project. It was a great success as well. And from there, AT was evolving as a business, and I'm a very good start the thing guy. I'm the guy you hired to start the thing. I don't know if I have the right skills to run the thing, but to start the thing is me. So,
and that's some good self-awareness.
Yeah, it's important.
It's important to have that kind of self-awareness.
Yeah, so you don't embarrass yourself. And then I had a very interesting view of the sector from Africa's Talking, because we were the default for most companies that needed to do SMS authentication. So I could infer which were the fastest growing businesses in a region based on the Africa's Talking usage. And that's around the time I saw Chipper Cash. So I was like, what the heck is this Chipper thing? And why is it up and to the right? So, I checked it out, downloaded the app, I tried it, and I was like, wow, this is like pretty cool.
And just for context, Africa's Talking, you were just incorporating, you're expanding the business, right? And you're done Georgia, which is like a market survey business, but you've not really touched fintech by this point, like in terms of hardcore fintech.
No,
right. So you're now getting in, into the ground. When now you're looking at Chipper Cash, you're actually now starting to get your mind wrapped around fintech.
What's interesting is that Africa's Talking had the STK push APIs for M-Pesa, I think from like 2017. Africa's Talking was probably one of the first companies in Kenya to get access to that API. And it was just like a thing that was lying in the background. I think even till today they have that API, but it's not a big part of their product offering. People still viewed AT as a telecoms company. But being in telecoms and seeing the way that people were layering financial services adjacently, so on top of the same infrastructure. And I wrote about this, I think, in 2018, 2019, about this inevitable convergence between banks and telcos. And you see it happening globally now. New Bank has an MVNO, Revolut is doing eSIMs. And it's just
even I think Netbank in SA.
Capitec has Capitec Connect, FNB has their own MVNO as well. And it's just been interesting to see that like materialize in strong ways. But for sure, I was not a fintech guy before then. I was just like really deeply fascinated by what was happening.
So just talk about now the Chipper Cash story, how it started and how it evolved.
So I checked out the product and I put a review on Twitter. This before I went to Chipper though, I put this review and I was like, this app is really cool. I think they're onto something. Such a nice experience. I was able to send money to myself in Tanzania at the time. I eventually made the decision, I think, circa 2019 to leave AT. Again, very good terms. I'm still involved in the business in Malawi in a limited capacity. But it was just time for a change, and I knew that I needed to try something in this fintech space. So I ended up joining Hover, and I was there for 18 months. And Hover's not a very famous company the way some of these others are, but we built some amazing tech. So we had an Android SDK for USSD automation. So you know, just doing a front end, but in the back end, it's dialing the codes and doing all these things. And this was actually what powered the very, very first version of Nala.
Yeah. I think I read that Benji wrote a post about it so many years.
Yeah. So, you know, it was very difficult because it was Android only, and then Android newer versions were getting very restrictive in terms of what you could do with the accessibility APIs on the operating system. So it made our product difficult to scale, especially across disparate handset manufacturers where everyone has their own custom version of the Android software. But that was a very interesting experience because we had users in maybe 40 plus countries, and like they all had like the same use case. But where we found an interesting sense of product market fit was for actually quality assurance automation testing. And our biggest customer at the time was Safaricom. Safaricom was willing to pay a pretty penny every year for us to have this to license our software, which would like continuously run USSD tests in the background. So it would like interact with the USSD menu and identify where there are breakages or quality leakages.
Got it.
And it was just so fascinating. So I was trying to sell that to banks in South Africa and Nigeria as well. But again, ultimately, I think the macro environment was not as conducive. Still probably some of the best people I've ever worked with. Ben and Jess Lyon. Ex-Copo, fantastic people. It was a small team. We were like hungry, hustling. And, you know, that opportunity showed me a lot because I had a lot of autonomy. I was the only business development person. So I'd be like, hey, I want to go check out this thing in Ethiopia. Cool, go. You know, like just get out of your way. And that was a very big learning experience for me. They ultimately pivoted into an app called Stacks, consumer facing. And that's what, you know, drove me to leave that because I am not a B2C guy. Consumers, man. Consumers are rude. If you delay somebody's transaction by 1 hour, you see a mess. Oh, your grandmother is a goat. Now, dude, I'd rather just deal with a small handful of people than
you know, like on my side, you know, having on how I experienced that is having the Frontier FinTech newsletter and a very curated reading list, and then now moving to YouTube and reading YouTube comments. I'm like, bro, like what the hell is going on? Like, just watch the video.
It's just, the masses are tough. You know? So I've kind of historically always shied away. So remember at this point, I had already been talking about Chipper for a very long time. I'd been helping the founders to do some recruitment. I think I had recruited 3 or 4 people on their behalf by the time that they were saying, hey, there's a role here.
This is 29.
This is now 20, because this was
just before COVID?
Yeah, just before COVID. Okay. So this is like late 2019, early 2020.
It's interesting how like COVID has become, you know, like how people say 2000 BC. I think COVID now is like some kind of time framework. Like, was this before or after COVID?
I actually think it could be the most consequential event of this century.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a very wild time. I'm talking to the Chipper guys. I'm saying, guys, if there's something, I think I'd be very interested. And they say, we're building out a merchant business. And I was like, so B2B. So they had a early stage prototype, and I came up with a plan and said like, hey, if you want me to execute it, this is how I would do it. And then they saw that, they liked it, put pen to paper, and this was just before like Chipper really took off in terms of like user adoption and growth. So I found myself doing a lot of first guiding the team that was developing the product, and then sourcing the initial merchants. And that was like a very big ramp up in terms of learning, in terms of speed, because it was a very different environment. Investors were like growth. So I was spending a lot of time South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania. And yeah, that was really, really fun. We ended up launching, one of our first merchants was Carry First. They are now probably the largest African digital games distributor.
Yeah.
And then we did an integration with Twitter Tips. We were the first ever African integration for Twitter Tips.
Yeah.
That was really good stuff. And then there's a handful of other merchants that have gone live since then, and it's been pretty successful. And I remember trying to pitch to some of the merchants that I'm able to approach more constructively at Ebanx today, just as a function of scale. And it was just so heartbreaking. You hear something like, "Oh, this thing is cool, but like you guys have like 6 million users." It's not, I'll never forget one conversation with a gentleman called Konstantin Surkov. He was formerly at Netflix. Now he runs his own business called NoPan. And, Konstantin made time for me when it didn't make sense for him to make time for me. But like I managed to get on a call, I explained to him, I was selling, I was like, woo, we're going to make this thing. And it's like, we don't have like direct integrations with anything for like 6 million users. Like maybe if you're at 100 or something, then it starts to seem
and for you, you're
interesting.
like 6 million is a lot.
Yeah, because now we were on the top of like the Africa fintech.
Exactly.
So, biggest fintech. That was pre-unicorn, but still quite significant capital raise. So it was it was just like, oh wow,
there's scale
global
and then
merchants
there's
at
scale.
scale.
Yeah.
There's like scale,
Yeah.
right? So. I was at Chipper for I think 2.5 years. Again, good people. Post-COVID, I think there was a massive macroeconomic shift that I don't have to explain here. And investor sentiment sort of changed, and we had to have new metrics. There were a number of layoffs, and people were impacted. I was not impacted directly, but a lot of the team that I was counting on to be able to deliver the outcomes that we were seeking were impacted, and it became difficult for me to be able to execute on that vision. So, had a conversation with the founders, and, I work for people, not for companies. The same way I came in is the same way I'll go out. I'll come to you straight and say, guys, this is not really working. We had a very, very good time at Chipper, though. Pushed the acquisition of Zona in Zambia. So that was also my first like proper M&A. Structuring, and there was a lot of like shared alignment there, and ultimately I was trying to sell to Ebanx from Chipper. So I was like, okay, since the merchants won't integrate us, why don't we sell to the aggregators who obviously can then include the payment method? And I was pushing Ebanx a lot, and they said, hey, this thing is cool, but like actually we have different plans. That time they had just announced an expansion into Africa, post a $400 million raise. So, as an expansion person, I had to admit that the offer was pretty tempting, and I really liked the people. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years.
And it's interesting, I think around that time, that was 2021. Of course, through the newsletter, I got to know of like Ebanx's interest in Africa, because I think some of the guys reached out and they want to understand the market, and so I think I could tell that these guys are starting to look into the market seriously. But how did the gig come about? What's the story behind how you actually got this position?
So we got introduced, I think, to the CEO from a mutual investor of Chipper and Ebanx, something like this. I don't recall. And we had I prepared a presentation. We had a few conversations, and then I got introduced to the CEO, and I had to schedule a call with him. And at the time, I was in Mauritius, so I was having a meeting in Mauritius with the head of the Investment Promotion Authority and the Deputy Minister of Finance. Mauritius was actually on a tour. Trying to attract fintech, so met with the central bank governor in South Africa, and then they invited us over. So I'm sitting there in Port Louis, overlooking the water, and it's a very nice view. And I'm catching up with the CEO of Ebanx, and I'm explaining what I'm up to, and he's just like, "Wow, who is this kid? Like, what you been here with the deputy minister? And, like, you're making things happen, right?" So had a conversation. I think I kind of left an impression in terms of the depth of my reach in terms of relationship. And at that point, I was kind of convinced that, okay, based on Ebanx's priorities, they're probably not going to integrate Chipper. But I'm going to help you anyway. And anyone who's ever asked me for help, I think can attest to the fact that if I have the capacity, I will try and like, connect you or, move you
Make
along.
things happen.
Yeah. So I think I was like, I'm willing to help you guys get set up. Just tell us what you want to do. We can find a way to structure the commercials later.
Yeah.
Then fast forward to October 2022, at Money 2020 in Vegas. And again, I go to see the Ebanx people. I'm trying to close the contracts. And then I met with the then global president. Her name is Paula Belizia. She's at AWS now. And, I sat down with them and we had a conversation about the market. Not about Chipper, not about Ebanx, just about the market. This is what you should do. And I think they kind of saw that, this guy knows the execution roadmap.
And at this point, were you just not working for anyone, or you're still...
No, still a Chipper.
You're still a Chipper.
Yeah, so I was not even looking for the Ebanx role.
Got it.
Right? So I get back home a few weeks later. I see that Paula scheduled a call and she wants to talk. I'm like, okay. So we had that conversation. And for me, I really like to take my time to understand if people are people I can work with, because I'm not the easiest person to work with. But like, if you know my strengths and weaknesses, I think, there's mutual ground. So we had a few conversations. I got to know the team and I realized like, okay, this could actually be a good fit. And then started planning my transition out. That was like 3 to 4 months. And then April 2023 is when I started at Ebanx.
Got it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting story. One of the things you've said, and I think on LinkedIn or Twitter or something, you said that this could be one of your most, like your life's work, like one of the most consequential things you do. And that's a lot coming from you. I mean, because you're the African fintech guy, right? So could you just tell us what that statement means?
Yeah, it's so tough because this is also my first time where Ebanx is the biggest and in some senses the most mature company I've ever worked with. So you go from like 200 people to an 800 person org, and now there's like press guidelines and I had to involve the PR team just to get clearance to speak here. The really unfortunate thing is that I can't talk about a lot of the work that I do at Ebanx. It's just the way that the business is structured, the privacy of the clients. But what I can say is like, a really big moment for me earlier this year was when we went live with one of the world's largest advertising companies, is how I'd position them in the social space. And we went live in like, a handful of markets, including Nigeria. And the amount of work that our team had put in to construct the rail and to get it in such a way that would be satisfactory for the clients. I mean, we serve literally some of the largest companies on earth, right? Across any category. To be able to do that well, they really are so specific about how the way that they want things to be done. And the level of quality that needs to go into an integration that's at that scale. Because if you make a mistake that causes them downtime for 2 or 3 hours, that's potentially like a 6-figure loss for that day. Right? So to be able to do that, to be able to launch some of the some brands that have never really operated domestically in Africa before. Some of the largest SaaS companies we're privileged enough to call customers. That has just been truly incredible. And when you talk to the merchants and you understand where their pain points are, and you're like, okay, this is just a guy or this is just a lady who's also in a very tough job, right? They're like a deep payments expert, but they have like 6 groups of stakeholders that they have to manage. And yes, you're thinking Africa is nice, but then it's competing with resources that are integrating Japan.
Which is billions of dollars.
So being able to do that and to set up that infrastructure to make it enterprise ready, has been a very interesting journey, because we've had to work with some of the largest fintechs on the continent domestically and push them to say, guys, you don't have this. You need to build this. And then to be able to drive, some of those outcomes. And for me, the biggest impact is, seeing what it means for users. Because you see the transaction volume, it's all just numbers on a graph. But when you look at like the social media comments, and it's like somebody's telling their friend like, hey, you can pay with your Naira card now on this website. And it's like, you go to the business communities for importers and they're like, finally, we have Naira payment. That's been like really, 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 really great to see. And now more recently with the work that we're doing with Capitec, which is in the news, we've launched Capitec Pay. This is going to be the easiest way for the customers of the largest bank in South Africa, which is, arguably one of the largest consumer markets, not only in Africa, but in emerging markets across the global south, to be able to easily and compliantly make payments to international merchants. And, no matter what, I'll be able to say that, that was me.
Yeah, man, and that's a good place to be, because like these are the stories that matter, right? Like when you look back at your life, you look at such impact. But let's now try and understand the problem, right? Because I think, when people talk about merchants and collections in Africa, there's a bit of it's like a nebulous gray area that sometimes you can't really wrap your head around what's going on. I think the thing that I'd want to understand is that if you're a large merchant, say company X that does business across the world, right? Why can't you collect from customers in Nigeria and Kenya and South Africa? What's going on that's making it so difficult? And therefore, what does an Ebanx have to do to actually make that business work?
Yeah. So it's layered. Number one, and I think the biggest constraint is that most of these businesses are not payments companies, right? So they don't have the in-house expertise to even start to do that sort of assessment and figure out what are the payment methods. And like there's so many, especially for digital sellers. So if you're selling software, for example, the whole world is your market. And there's an argument to be made that you can capture enough of that market with card alone, right? So, the US, Europe, card works, so you integrate into it like a Stripe, a Checkout, an Adyen.
And you're good.
You're okay, right? But you reach a certain scale now where you have demand that's coming from other regions that you can't serve, like, Kenya, for example, is not a card market. And it's actually been very interesting. Kenya is the only country that I've identified of the ones that I look at, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, where the number of cards issued is going down. I just find that mind-blowing. It's peaked at 12 million. You guys have said, nah, enough.
No more cards.
And like, it's okay. We're fine here. And it's M-Pesa. And that's interesting. So it's not their core business. Number two is that there's actually a lot of restrictions on connecting to local payments infrastructure, which is something that Visa, MasterCard, and some of the other larger schemes globally have managed to integrate themselves into. So when I use my Malawian issued Visa card, well, back then when we had Forex, now it won't work. But if I was to swipe it here, right, Visa has done the work to ensure that I'm paying Arch Cafe, and this money comes from my bank in Malawi, and the central bank is happy with it. They've connected to the local payments infrastructure. And the reason that Visa and MasterCard are so successful is because they are really the only examples of businesses that have done this. They've connected to the payments infrastructure at scale. Now you have alternative payment methods that are cropping up, and then they don't have a common standard like a Visa or a MasterCard to be able to plug into. So it means that for those alternative payment methods, somebody has to go identify them, connect to the local payments infrastructure. Again, that's regulated. So there needs to be a local company that's in the market that is acting as the merchant of record for the purposes of that transaction. Then you have to do this over and over and over again for multiple payment methods in multiple markets. And like, if it's not your business to do payments, you end up building a payments business anyway. So what we found is that ultra large merchants prefer to find players like an Ebanx to be able to have a single point of integration and settlement across multiple markets because they understand the complexity. And then also to be able to justify the integration versus like, oh, should we optimize our Stripe so that we can unlock 2% more approval rates in the US? Or do we now go and figure out like Nigeria bank transfer? And again, this vis-a-vis global priorities where Africa is not...
and a 2% unlock in the States is potentially the entire African market.
So it helps to have like, specialists. And I think we were lucky that Ebanx started out in Brazil, which is really like the cornerstone of Latin America in many senses, and sort of like evolved organically because it's like, oh, you do Brazil, so what about Mexico? What about what? So a lot of the merchants that we have in Africa are actually merchants that are integrated to us for other countries. But because it's like, oh, you've already got the integration, you've already got the reconciliation, settlement flow, everything else, why don't we just open up this thing?
Exactly.
Otherwise, the reality is that those merchants would not make a decision to say, I need an Africa-specific provider, right?
And it's interesting when you say that, is that infrastructure actually unlocks economic opportunities, right? Because just by Ebanx having these integrations, all of a sudden now, trade between a Nigeria and the USA increases, albeit marginally.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to speak about is that, of course, that's the payments enablement, like connecting to a Pampe or an Ope in Nigeria or something like that. I think there's the big part also. One thing that you guys are known for is settling in hard currencies, right? And so, how does that work? Because we both know how, currency regimes in Africa are so fluid, right? And access to hard currency, especially as a Malawian, you'd know better than most people. and so, how do you guys solve that?
Yeah, so treasury is a big function across the organization. Essentially, in every country, there is a way for you to access dollar liquidity.
Yeah.
It usually requires you to set up infrastructure with the right banking partners or liquidity providers. This could be IMTOs who have the inverse flow into the country. And we're a major payment institution out of Singapore. We just received our approval in principle just a few months ago. And being an MPI, it allows you to have conversations with banks at a different level. I think that has been very, very helpful. So we're able to say, hey, XYZ bank in Y market, you're the biggest bank here. We have this problem. We need to be able to solve it. These are the flows. This is how we do the KYC. This is how we do the compliance. And you find that, okay, these are your options, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of complexity there. But what I will say is that in every country, there actually are counterparts that can offer you this service. Yeah. They typically don't offer it to smaller businesses or individuals, but at the scale that we operate, we're able to do that. And then we have a very sophisticated treasury operation. It was one of the first roles that we hired for in Africa because you need to be able to get it right. One wrong move and then you're on the wrong side of the compliance and it creates issues. So, I wish I could say more. We don't get into the source because that's the, that some of that is specialist knowledge that I think gives us an edge. We took the time to research every market and find what is the compliant, scalable way to be able to get dollar liquidity and at what price, right? And then so you offer that pricing, it's passed down to the merchants in a very transparent way. And then they're able to make decisions about whether this makes sense for them or not.
Yeah, and it seems that there's a technology part of actually doing the integrations. There's a treasury part, there's the local licensing and relationships part. Is there any other component that I'm missing that is critical? And when you're looking at this answer, it doesn't have to be specific to Ebanx, but any business that's trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, I think those are the major buckets. But that assumes that you already have a business development function that is sourcing the merchants or the customers from wherever they're coming from. Another big piece is tax compliance. So that's a function. Ensuring that you have the right support structures to enable the merchants to figure out how to pay taxes and to be able to do it on a recurring basis. Because then that becomes actually a barrier. It's like, oh, you've enabled the payment method, but we don't know how to pay tax here. How do we register? How do we, do all these things? And I found that investing early in that has also been a key driver to success. And then also like the operations element, the service level that some of these merchants expect is very specific. So you need to have somebody on the ground to make sure. And some of the concepts don't map one-to-one, right? So one of the things I'm finding out is that in Nigeria, it's very common to hire chargeback analysts. Like someone whose job it is every day to go into a dashboard and look at chargebacks, because the process for disputing or accepting chargebacks is not automated. And it's not automated from a lot of the continent. Even in South Africa, a lot of people don't have like chargeback automation. And this is something that is almost like expected in some parts of the world. So I'm just like, wow, like that's actually a startup. If I was doing this, I'll probably be doing like chargeback automation for PSPs in Africa. That's a startup. Those are some of the pillars.
So, And I think I want you to help me understand this, right? Like, you're defining a lot of complexity in terms of setting this up, getting the payments going. But I think that has to be seen in the context of like, how much business can you actually do in Africa, right? So in my mind, there's a complexity and reward ratio that I'm not understanding how you actually tie those two things together to say that, yeah, this is a viable business, right? Like, it seems to me that there may not be enough business in some markets to actually justify all that hard work.
I disagree completely.
Okay.
I used to have this view, but now that we have some of these large enterprise customers and we see some of the volumes that they process, assuming that it's just a fraction of their overall business in the region, it is worthwhile. It is actually worthwhile. And I think that there's a lot more than meets the eye. Markets like Nigeria, like South Africa, like Egypt, have huge business sectors that are pushing volumes cross-border, both ways. Importing and exporting is a very big vertical. Digital services is a very big vertical. Entertainment is a very big vertical. And we've managed to grow the region from having like next to nothing in terms of volume to being the fastest growing region across the entire portfolio of markets that we operate in. And going toe to toe in terms of numbers with some of our biggest LATAM markets, So it's very interesting to see.
And I think it's one thing I've always, there's an element of build it and they'll come in Africa, right? In the sense that there's a lot of people, there's these narratives around the amount of business that can actually be done. But the counter to that is like the agency that exists and people wanting to do something with their lives. And that means starting a, Facebook page and needing to buy ads because of, trying to grow your business. There's a lot of that coming up in the continent. And, such infrastructure is actually changing lives in terms of you're actually helping people, build their lives. So that's a very interesting element.
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of what makes it like rewarding. We have a very wide portfolio of customers, but a lot of them are actually like productivity tools. And you'll see some logos on the websites, on our website about some of the brands that we serve. But like, to be able to be able to enable that in a very impactful way. That has been very nice to see. Like the productivity tools, like, oh, this person can now pay for this and use it. And now I think that the new wave is AI, right? And I am a massive AI power user. So I'm paying for ChatGPT, Claude, Grok.
I think I pay for all of them
as
well.
It's a bad habit. But I see what that does for my productivity. And like, I know that most of the people who can afford to pay, in Malawi, for example, they won't be able to because their international cards will not be accepted, right? So it's like, you can be fundamentally excluded from a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in terms of learning how to use AI tools quickly. This is like the biggest thing to happen to computers since the internet, in my view, because of the lack of the payment method acceptance. Right? I imagine there are many potential paid users of AI tools here in Kenya who just needed to be available in M-Pesa. And like being able to use those tools, what that does for me personally, I see the value, and it helps to be able to make a difference.
I mean, I always look at AI, for instance, and I look at like, the number of smallholder farmers in Africa and, just getting crop information, uploading a picture of, a leaf and saying what the hell is going on with this specific leaf, like what disease could this be and what should I do? I just think there's a massive unlock there. And there's this kind of like narrative that a lot of the digital spend in Africa is around things like gambling and stuff like that. And it seems to me that that's just not true.
I think that the barrier to entry for the gambling industry, they design some of the most sticky user experiences and they attach it to the market, so it's like localized. They do the marketing, they invest in the space. I don't have I'm not the biggest fan of the industry, but I don't have strong views about it. But I think like something like that, like the example you're talking about, smallholder farmers, that's a killer use case that AI could make a huge difference in, but not in its current form. I think the interface for most emerging markets will be voice. Africans love voice notes. Like, you could have typed this in, but like it's a voice note. So if you now have like a WhatsApp bot that you talk to, and you can send it pictures, and you can ask it questions in your local language, and it like tracks the progress of your crops and gives you, updates and feedback, and that costs you like 150 Kenya shillings a month that you pay with M-Pesa, and it stops working when you haven't paid. That's a business. That's a business. For sure. That's actually a business. But you find that most of the large global organizations are not going to tailor their approaches to that. So they're building out smartphone app first interfaces that require a certain degree of sophistication to use. And I don't think that many of the consumers are. There's a reference source that I use called World Data Lab. So they have a very nice dashboard. And I can show you data from each major African city. And they have interesting breakdowns of how much every person... How large are the groups of people at different levels of spending power, from plus $100 to sub $100 a day, and you find that in many of these countries there's actually like a middle of people who are not like maybe super sophisticated, but they're not poor. They have lights. They're on WhatsApp. They're doing okay. So that segment I think has a lot to be served if we can do our work right. Cumulatively as an industry.
That's very interesting points. Now, I think one of the questions I'd have is like, there's different approaches to kind of collecting payments from Africa. There's one element where you work with local partners. So a specific PSP in South Africa, there's so and so in Nigeria, there's so and so in Kenya, and that's kind of a question of how deep into the metal you guys are going into. How do you guys approach that?
So people always find it interesting, and they say like, oh, so you compete with some of the largest PSPs in Africa. I'm like, no, actually we don't. We probably have the integration. And I think what people need to realize is that there's a lot of layers when it comes to building interoperability. You need to have players at different levels of the stack to be able to do different things for different audiences, right? So we work with some of the largest fintechs in Africa because they have access to the infrastructure, right? So they've built the local payment integrations. Sometimes they own the payment method, as in the case of Capitec Pay that we've done today. And they know that they're not going to reach these ultra large merchants directly. So they need to have somebody that's in the middle. And what's interesting is that some of the larger PSPs also connect to us and say like, hey, you guys can do something. I can't speak to it on the podcast, but I reshared some of the stuff that we've been doing in India on my LinkedIn. And you start to realize that there's value at every layer that's being created for a specific audience. Most people look at, there's only room for like 2 or 3 major PSPs in Africa. But that's probably true maybe if you're serving a specific vertical in a specific country. But when it comes to true global scale, probably there aren't even enough layers. I think there'll still be some bigger companies that come out and aggregate all of us so that you can have a footprint for everything. Because today, there still isn't a universal payment method on Earth. There's no payment method that you can use everywhere on Earth. Cash becomes very close. Very, very close. But there's also issues of like, currency exchange is my thing going to be accepted there. But there's no like electronic payment method that you can use universally. And, we live in a world of like holographs, Ozempic, AI, and truly incredible technology. And you don't have this yet. So
do you think stable coins come close? Actually, what's your take on that? And you'd imagine like for an Ebanx, like they could solve some of your treasury problems, but you have to counterweigh that with the compliance aspect, I'm sure.
stablecoins are tricky. We at Ebanx we view cryptocurrency as an asset, not as much as a payment method, but we pay attention to evolving trends, and we realize that there is value there. Now, me as a user, as an individual, I'm very bullish on stablecoins. I find it to be the easiest way to actually store value that I need to spend, because I can off-ramp in whatever country I'm in via the payment method of my choice. So actually, when I was starting this trip at the beginning of the week, I left Joburg over the weekend, and I just stabled my money. I got to Lagos, I contacted my off-ramp guy, done. And I was doing that as I'm spending, because I don't want to be holding some local currency that I can't easily change back. I get here, I go on Binance P2P,
exactly.
I've got it in my M-Pesa. And I'm really a big fan of the Cast card, which is a physical card that I think most people can order in most parts of the world. And you get that, they send you a physical card, and you can like top it up with USDC or T on Solana, and it's very cheap, and like you can spend from that card immediately the moment you top up. So I'm seeing the problem that it's solving for me, because I just need a value store that's stable, and I have small expenses that I can't wait like hours for a Swift transfer to take place over. So I'm really, really bullish on that. And obviously the institutional use case speaks for itself. I think the biggest impact, and I was telling Tayo Akinyemi about this, the biggest impact is going to be people will no longer need to pre-fund pools of liquidity in order to power cross-border services. Because like right now, when you use Wise, it's not like the money moves amazing instantly from the UK to Kenya or whatever. They have the Kenya shilling sitting here on ground already,
and it's expensive to keep.
It's very
especially the challenge with Africa is that it's expensive to keep local currencies in multiple markets.
Exactly.
And then sometimes moving it around, and therefore how that manifests is like very expensive remittance costs for the typical person into the continent. The challenge I'm seeing with a lot of these people, I've spoken to a number of them on the podcast, and this is specifically people who'd benefit from such a use case, is the compliance hasn't caught up with the use case. And so there's still this kind of gray area where, like, if you want to be a compliant IMTO, if you want to be a compliant kind of person and be in the good books of the central bank, then you kind of have to walk this stablecoin journey gingerly and just make sure you don't make any crazy mistakes.
Yeah, I think what's most encouraging is that there isn't an explicit prohibition in many countries. So you see, like, jurisdictions like South Africa, Mauritius have pretty mature virtual assets frameworks. And the regulators seem to be supportive, because it actually, in some ways, enhances visibility, because there's only like a handful of ultra large market makers that exist, and they know what their addresses are. So if you're doing your business with like a Valor who's licensed in South Africa, they see that transaction, they know that, okay, it's Valor going to Samora. It solves for some of their problems. Where I think there might be resistance is that there's typically a premium between stablecoin dollar and like dollar in the country. And like in Malawi, for example, that premium is 2.5x. Right? So there's already an issue of there's a parallel market because there aren't enough dollars in the country. And now you would pay 2.5x just to get dollars. You might pay 2.52x to get stable coins. And if the regulation now acknowledges stable coins as dollar equivalent monetary instruments in that country, it's almost like the regulator is saying that, yes, this money is legitimate, and therefore that's this rate that the money is being traded at is legitimate. And there's no political will for that. There's no political will for that. So I actually think that's probably the biggest barrier to adoption. But in terms of like the benefits of the technology, my own personal view based on the limited interactions that I've had with regulators in that space is that they see their value. And it's anyone's guess as to how that evolves.
I think and it's an interesting point about like understanding the exchange rate, or at least acknowledging it and the kind of warmth that opens.
Yeah, if you say that, hey, this thing, and then someone is setting their rate at 2,000.
Yeah.
And like, again, you don't have this problem in countries where there isn't like a foreign currency shortage because it's the same rate as
Yeah.
So
yeah. But the Malawi example is reflective of many markets,
Yes.
right? Like, always I was speaking to someone, in Kenya, it's a very weird dynamic because we have a very open FX market, right? And so, some of the kind of like opportunities that exist in other markets may not exist here. But Kenya is very unique in that regard. Most of Africa is like extreme capital accounts. So very interesting point. I've lived in a country where I can see that, like, if you accept stablecoins and this is the exchange rate, it becomes a major problem.
No, it's crazy. Kenya is one of the few markets in sub-Saharan Africa that doesn't have any exchange control regulation, which is why you can walk into Westgate and go to the KCB ATM and withdraw dollars. Oh man, that is absolutely amazing. You can't do that even in South Africa.
I mean, like, even just get into my bank app, buy $1,000. It's like it's nothing,
Wow,
like
must be nice.
it's nice. It's nice.
So I have a Malawian FCDA account, and when you click convert, right, so it's a dollar account, and then you can only convert when you select the Kwacha currency as the destination. Then the convert button becomes enabled. If you now switch dollar as the destination from Kwacha, the convert button is disabled.
I mean, can you imagine, like, some product manager had to think of that?
It's like, it's crazy.
Like African problems. But, one thing I'd really be keen, of course, in Africa, like Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, those are the known markets, right? Like in terms of where you see volumes, right? Where else are you seeing some really interesting volumes for your business, especially geographically? And you can see that these other markets also have very high potential. And what are the broad use cases that you're finding, like you're seeing a lot of traction and growth, right? Like, so for instance, you've mentioned productivity. What are some of the other interesting ways that people are spending their money online, and you're seeing like real growth?
Yeah, so it's difficult to get away from the big four: South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria. That's 52% of the continent's GDP, and that's not changing anytime soon. It's a natural place for many global merchants to start, right? So a lot of our activity is concentrated there. But what's been interesting to learn is that, like, this is the first time that some of these brands are actually considering connecting to local infrastructure in those countries. Aside from that, I do think there are domestic payment systems that are extremely promising. There are barriers that prevent them from integrating with the global financial system the way that, someone like somewhere like a Kenya might do. Like, for example, Ethiopia. Ethiopia has a very vibrant local digital financial services ecosystem. And Ethiopians have propensity to consume, and they want to have access to the same sort of global services that many of us enjoy in other parts of the continent. But it's going to take a bit of time for the environment, both from a regulatory but also from a commercial perspective, to structure itself in such a way that it becomes clear what the path is for businesses like Ebanx and others to be able to enter and unlock those. So I'm very bullish on Ethiopia specifically. I think DRC also has a ton of potential. Zambia I've been bullish on for a very long time. Cote d'Ivoire is doing really, really well as well. And at some point, these regions are growing and their value is growing. And then also, global brands are checking their other markets expansion list fairly quickly. So I feel like there's upward pressure and downward pressure, and at some point there'll be a convergence. But that convergence will be at a different time for different countries, right? So you've already seen it happen in Nigeria with the Verve cards. most global merchants take Verve card if you're really serious about operating in Nigeria, because it's like, if you don't, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
You're seeing that now starting to happen with Kenya and M-Pesa. A lot of the large continental players know that, hey, if you want to be in Kenya, you need to have M-Pesa payments. We're going to be seeing it very soon with Capitec. You know, Capitec now banks over 50% of South African adults. So naturally, they felt a need to evolve that and to be able to offer an international payment method.
And you know, the interesting thing about Capitec and Capitec Pay is that you almost end up with a situation where you have a combination of the largest bank plus an M-Pesa type of situation. And that's like a very interesting place to be. You know, banking 50% of the country's population, that's not a normal thing in most markets.
Yeah. So to be accurate, it's the adult population. Unless someone will not come and say, oh, he's lying. No. But I'm actually seeing that and seeing what OPay did in Nigeria, and it's like very similar in terms of the playbook. So Capitec was started in 2001 and was entrenched in a country where banks had been existing for 100 plus years. And then they came up with an offering that was very competitive in terms of pricing. There's a book by TJ Sturdom called Stalking Giants that captures the history of Capitec. Very good book. And then OPay did something similar. You know, there had been banks for many years in Nigeria, but there was a segment that was not being very well served. Of course, the pain points were different. In South Africa, it was credit. In Nigeria, the pain point was more around reliability of transfers. And then they came in and they solved that problem very, very well. And everyone had to like get onto it because they have this problem. And then they built a payment method on top. So OPay has a native OPay Pay payment method that's extremely popular in Nigeria. And it's becoming very clear that for certain categories, you must support it because now you get access, account-to-account access to the largest account institution in the country. And cards have been great as a payment method and still are in very many ways. But there is like a certain type of friction that exists with scaling cards and managing card customers. In multiple geographies, there's issues of chargeback risk, fraud, and having like account-to-account payment methods has actually helped to alleviate some of that pressure. And especially for people who have a prepaid psychology, is how I would describe it. People like here in Kenya. People in Kenya are averse to subscriptions. Like, what do you mean I must just put my card on something and you take money from them? Nah. Remind me when it's time to pay,
and I'll pay
you. Right?
You know, it's interesting you say that because, like, even in South Africa, a huge dynamic. I was speaking to a leader of one of the largest BNPLs for an upcoming podcast, and his insight was that a big reason why people want to just end of the month take all your money from the account is because you're afraid of some of the direct debits that are going to come and hit your account, right? And that lack of control that you may just go into your account and like 10 rand has been taken and you're like, what's going on, right? So it's a mentality not just in Kenya but across the continent where you want to have that control over how you spend your money. For sure, I agree. I think Kenya does a great job of running on a prepaid economy because many things, I mean, when I lived here, I never had a postpaid service. Internet, everything,
water, electricity, my house help. It's like, and you can get bite-sized,
things.
So you needed like a plumber for that day. Sawa. It's 3,000. They'll come and like you're done. So I think it generally exists across the continent, and obviously there's a disconnect between that psychology and some of the payment methods, which is why you've seen alternative payments take up. Right? Like in South Africa, one would not expect that there's room for more APMs. Almost everyone has a card now. But lo and behold.
And how do you guys, because some of the services you guys offer, I mean, some of the merchants that you guys have this kind of subscription type businesses, right? And so how do you actually get that done in a world where there's account-to-account payments, mobile money payments? How do you solve that?
So two things are happening at the same time. Number one is that merchants are becoming generally more flexible, and it's very hard to convince a merchant that is used to acquiring a customer once that you have to acquire them each and every month. It's like crazy. It throws off a lot of the traditional metrics that are used across the world for measuring the success of subscription businesses. But now they're starting to really open their eyes to that and find alternative ways to satisfy those constraints. At the same time, the account-to-account payment methods are building native recurrency. So we've seen it happen here with M-Pesa Ratiba, which is like an early version of that. And generally, most account-to-account services are realizing that we need to have this functionality in order to be able to serve some of what is only exclusively served by card today.
Yeah, that's true. And we didn't touch on like some of the areas in which you're seeing growth, like in terms of like, types of spend, at least at Ebanx.
Yeah, so we put out a report called Beyond Borders that I think speaks to this in much, much better detail than I can speak to right now. My team did prepare some high-level quick stats for me, but it's more around the distribution of the payment methods, right? So we see a very clear global trend around a shift from card payments to alternative payment methods at a very rapid scale, most notably with Pix in Brazil, which didn't exist like 6 years ago. And now you see almost more transactions taking place on Pix than on traditional card rails. We see, very similar trends in India with UPI. In Nigeria, the same thing has happened. We don't have a lot of historical data, but I was talking to one of the largest and earliest fintech players there. They now have more volume on NIBS bank transfer than they have on card. And it's just been like a very clear take from here, go to there. There is like a segment of the population that's getting access to card at the same time. So actually card is still growing, right? But it's just not growing as fast as alternative payment methods as a function of the total volume. So that's been very interesting to see. And all of this is all nice and cool, but like the fact remains that some 90% of retail transactions on the continent today are still cash-based. So there's still a lot of work for us to do. And but people spend on whatever they like. That's what I'll tell you.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
People spend on whatever they like. There's no patterns that I've observed at least.
And no, cash is still an issue. And I think I was speaking to someone who, you're saying like if you want to solve a lot of e-commerce in Africa, you really can't ignore cash because without cash, like that's a kind of like a latent barrier to some of these things. But then now wrapping it up to a more like fun part. You've done fintech over many years. I think I've known you for quite some time, and you're always thinking and talking about this space. If you're a founder now, what kind of businesses would you be building? Apart from the chargeback business.
I'm telling you that thing. Please, someone go build this. I'll help you get investors. It's such a pain point, and it's so specific that you already know who your ideal customer profile is. And it's easy to scale because you can price as a function of the value of the amount of chargeback value that you're dealing with, or you can price per transaction. And like someone who just does chargeback automation, is what I can call it, at scale, I honestly think that's like a $10 million annual revenue business. If you do it properly in Africa, if you do like not add LATAM, or it can actually be amazing.
But someone would say that card transactions are stalling.
But they're not going away tomorrow. So, that's
still has some runway.
Honestly, if I had to just figure out what to do quickly, that's probably that. Or I would go into local currency stablecoins for African currencies, especially the ones that are volatile and have like premiums between the official and less official rates.
Why is that an opportunity? Like, one thing I struggle to understand is, and I want your help on this. There's something I could be missing. Like there's the element of stable coins. Let's look at USD stable coins, offering you two things. Number one is like a store of value, especially if you have a volatile currency. Number two is just like a very efficient settlement method, right? If you are in a specific country, what specific value, if you're looking from it from the settlement or store of value lens, like what is a local stablecoin doing?
Yeah. I don't think there's too much value there. The reason why I think it's worth doing though is because of price discovery. So what happens now is that there isn't a way for you to do the market making on chain. You know the price for a single USDC in Kenya or in South Africa or in Nigeria today, but like that's because somebody has set it. Somebody has said, this is my rate, I have the USDT. What's supposed to happen, and the really big benefit of taking advantage of blockchain solutions is that you can actually have like an automated market maker that is looking at some demand and supply on both sides and then setting a reasonable price based on some safety parameters, of course, based on actual demand and supply. And one of the biggest challenges around FX in Africa is just like price obscurity. There's no price. It's just the price that,
it's very
Virtual, Nala,
Exactly.
Wodramate, everyone has their own price. So you don't know like what is the actual price. So if you now do local currency stable coins and you have that trading between dollar stable coins and local currency stable coins taking place on chain, you enable price discovery. This is by far the biggest thing. And institutions will jump on it because they're like, okay, at least this is a pseudo reliable reference for what the price of this currency is. Number two is that you typically have to back that stable coin that you're issuing with near liquid or hyperliquid. Hyperliquid's a protocol, so I'm saying it in the context of not the protocol, but near liquid assets, and like that could be like bonds and whatever. So you're making money on this side from yield there. You're making money from fees or conversion, whatever you're charging to get in and out of the stable coin, and you just sit there. It's a dream business. It's a dream if you can get to scale.
If
you can like ensure that it's not used by shady people. Most stable coins go to die because they have, criminals are early adopters
of everything.
Everything
efficient.
Like these funny tools. But it'll probably be one of those two. And if the regulatory environment were clear enough, it's something that I would seriously consider.
Oh, very interesting. I like that market making thing because sometimes when I have USDT and I'm trying to convert it into cash, I'm like, what rate am I gonna get?
Exactly.
And even when you click on whatever, what ends up in your account sometimes is different from what you thought was the price on Binance or any of these apps.
Very much so.
So thank you so much. This has been incredible. Is there anything else like you'd want to walk us through in terms of like numbers or anything?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I was hoping to get something from you.
Me too. But it's just we're a private company. Play our cards very close to our chest. What I can say though is that we'll be sharing a bit of news next week at our Ebanx Payment Summit in Mexico. So this is a global gathering of some of our largest customers, partners, friends, industry associates, and I think you're going to like the announcements that come up there. But I'm not the spokesperson on those matters.
I get it, man.
Otherwise, if it were up to me, spill everything.
No, man, thank you so much, and thanks for coming to the show. This has been an incredible episode. Always a pleasure to sit down with you. I learned so much, and so man, I'm looking forward to part 2 of this.
Thank you so much for having me, and really looking forward to taking a look at it. And the new path that you've taken now without the paywall, I think it opens up your audience in a very big way. So I'm excited for the future, not only of the podcast, but generally of all the media work that you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.